you had mentioned the steroid trial and the sex scandal and everything. I mean, was the steroid trial the biggest story you covered in wrestling, or can you think of a bigger one?
Steroids were one of the biggest stories I ever covered because it was such a long period of time that I was knee deep in the middle of all of it, and that's from breaking the story about Dr. George Saharian going on trial and covering that trial in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, following up week after week on the radio show, and then it explodes again after Hulk Hogan lies on Arsenio Hall, and then Billy Graham and Dr. D. David Schultz come out with allegations about them personally shooting him up with steroids for many years, and so it was an all-encompassing time period and then it segued right into the sex scandals in the beginning of '92, and that was a horrific time period as well.
Because during that time it was they had brought in Jerry Jarrett into WWE. Do you fall on either side of that? Of if Vince went off to jail, they were going to put him in charge or anything? Did you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think it was just a safety measure to bring Jarrett in case Vince was convicted by the federal government, who botched the case in so many different ways. So he had to prepare just in case he was going to be found guilty and serve some jail time. But he was looking out for the for the safety of his company to try to keep it going. And at that time, it was a very perilous situation. Attendance was down. He was on trial. The storylines, the characters. I mean, it was a mess. But lo and behold, I mean, he came through it with flying colors, and then, started changing the way he pushed wrestlers, not really focusing on the big steroid monsters, and really kind of concentrate more on the work rate of guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. And then, of course, Russo comes in, and then the Attitude Era begins.
Now, I saw you on what actually made me think, because I had heard, I knew who you were, but, when I watched the season finale of Dark Side of the Ring, it kind of brought you more to the forefront of my memory again. It was like, that is somebody who you were on my bucket list of like people I wanted to get on the show. And, so, I saw you were on the season finale, Dark Side of the Ring. We've made it known it's one of our favorite shows, me and Greg. We never miss an episode. And you were obviously on the season finale talking about the steroid trial. What was that whole experience like of being on the show and kind of getting in contact with them?
Well, they reached out to me, and I had an existing relationship with Darkseid because I participated in the Herb Abrams episode.
That's right, yeah.
That's one of my favorites, by the way.
Yeah, that was, Herb was an interesting guy, and I helped him set up his New York run and helped him with his first few shows up in the New York area, but he was a nut. And but Darkseid, covered him, and that's how I got to meet Jason and Evan. And then when I knew they were doing a steroid episode, they knew about my archives and all the stuff I've documented and kept, and how heavily involved I was in the coverage of that story. So it was a no-brainer for me to do that show with them. And we taped my interview down in Florida in the beginning of this year. Because of the pandemic, there was a lot of different travel restrictions, so I had to drive down to Florida and do the interview there. But I'm happy with the way it turned out. I'm happy with the way they covered it. And aside from what Jerry McDevitt said about me, he'll have his opinion, and I'll have my opinion on what was going down at that time. But at the end of the day, when I look at the show, I feel good about it.
I will say I was shocked when I found out that they got Jerry McDevitt for that show. I was like, whoa, he's doing an interview on a wrestling show?
They were shocked as well. When they reached out and he said he'd do it, that was a great get for them to get Jerry on there.
I can assume that was one of their white whales. It's like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he really hasn't done very many public interviews, and he was so good at that trial, and he's one of the best attorneys there is. I mean, he's a smart, intelligent guy, and he's been with Vince for many, many years, and he proved his worth alone during that trial.
Yeah, we joke that I'm sure Vince McMahon probably bought him at least 3 houses along the way. Very large.
Well, I'm sure that he's made quite a bit of money working with Vince.
Yeah,
that's just for the steroid trial.
Yeah, right.
He may owe that man his life.
Yeah, right. I mean that they have a very deep friendship, and not just a professional relationship, but Vince cares about him. He took care of him, and you don't have a lawyer by your side for as many years as they've been together unless the relationship is beneficial for both of them.
Yeah, I can imagine.